Welcome back to Prophecy in the Bible. Today's topic is a Christmas message. Now, we're going to be taking a look at the Gospel of Matthew, which is the second narrative having to do with the birth of Christ. The first, of course, being the Gospel of Luke. Now, there are some differences, especially when you look at the genealogy. For one thing, the genealogy that's being followed through in the book of Matthew is actually Joseph's line. And of course, Joseph is the stepfather, but not the blood father of Jesus Christ. Of course, the Holy Spirit from God being the Father. So when you read through it, you find that it says, as it introduces each one of the ancestors, that is basically by law, meaning by law or the fact that there is a relationship in that regard. Now, when you look at the book or Gospel of Luke, which is Mary's genealogy leading up to Jesus, there we see it is a bloodline, going from, father to son to father to son. So that is one of the major differences between the two. Now, there are other differences, and I just want to point out one of them, and that's the fact that when you look at the genealogy of Matthew, you find that the line goes through Solomon. But when you look at the one of Mary, it goes through another son of David, which is Nathan. And of course, the reason being is Solomon himself was not a very good king. He was an idolater. So it would only seem fitting that if the line was to go through that was of a bloodline of Christ, that it would go through someone other than Solomon. In other words, go through Nathan. The other thing is we'll find is that in the genealogy of the book of Matthew, which is again Joseph's genealogy, you find that it only goes or starts basically at Abraham, where we look at Mary's and it's traced all the way back to Adam and Eve. And there's some other differences as well too, but I thought those were a couple important ones to point out. Now, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to read from the birth of Jesus Christ according to what the book of Matthew has to say. Let's begin. This is how the birth of Jesus Christ came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be with child through the Holy Spirit, because Joseph, her husband, was a righteous man and did not want to expose her to public disgrace. He had in mind to divorce her quietly. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him and took Mary home as his wife. But he had no union with her until she gave birth to a son, and he gave him the name Jesus. Now, the verse 23 that we had just read actually comes from Isaiah 7:14, and it indicates that basically this prophecy will now be fulfilled, this prophecy that had been made by Isaiah. And the term that was used in the actual prophecy was Alma, which is rendered virgin in the Isaiah passage. But it means basically a young woman of marriageable age, a maiden. And again, this is to be construed as a virgin. And that's what indeed had happened in the case of Mary.
Now, regarding verse 23 of Matthew, which we just read, the word Parthenos is used, which definitely indicates a virgin in the truest sense. So, therefore, there really is no confusion.
And of course, Emmanuel, of course, meaning God with us, is exactly what will take place with the birth of Christ. Now, he is born in the land of Bethlehem, which means the house of bread. And as you well know, Jesus has many names. And one of them is, of course, that he is the bread of life. And it is here that the Magi make their appearance. Now, they think basically that this was a class of learned men of either Persia or Babylonia. And they always came up with this concept that there were three, at least three anyway, there could have been more because of the three special gifts that was given to them, which is gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And it was very likely, of course, that there's some time between the actual birth of Christ and to the time that they made their appearance, because there is a mention that they were in a house as opposed to being in a stable, as had been mentioned in the Gospel of Luke. So there, like I said, there are differences between the two, but each one sort of adds another layer to the description of Christ's birth as well. And we also hear a lot about what happens in the case of the Magi and how they were asked to report to Herod, when after they had seen the child, supposedly by Herod, to say that he would then wanted to show homage as well. But of course, he was trying to find out because he wanted to do away with this contestant to the kingship. He felt indeed very threatened. And of course, when the Magi realized this and left and did not go to Herod as he had requested, and this angered him, and this is where the slaughter of the innocents 2 years of age and younger had occurred.
This also was prophesied. In Jeremiah 31:15, it describes Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted, for her children are gone. Now Joseph had been warned by an angel that Herod would do this, and so fled with Mary and the child to Egypt.
Which is also another prophecy that comes from Hosea 11:1 that says, "Out of Egypt I called my son." And then so this indeed fulfilled again that prophecy, but it also was a parallel to how it is that the people of Israel had come out of Egypt and had moved into the promised land. So it was, again, you could look at that as saying now Jesus has moved out of Egypt into the promised land and is going to bring freedom to his people through the forgiveness of their sin.
Now, this was just a brief lesson on the birth narrative of Matthew and how Old Testament prophecy was fulfilled. There are many more examples, and I urge you to go into the scriptures and study them for yourself.
So, again, I wish you a very happy holiday season, a very Merry Christmas, and a very happy and healthy New Year. I thank all of those who have stuck with me throughout these broadcasts, and I hope that you will again join me in the year to come with more about the Bible and what it is to tell us and how to lead a proper life according to his will and not our own.